podcast of Conversations with Marlon, the guitar player in the corner. I'm your host, Marlon Bankston. My guest today is Xavier Fleming. Xavier is a saxophonist, musician, and he is also in the field of music therapy. I thought he would be interesting for our audience to hear from concerning his journey as a musician and what he does for music therapy. Most people may not know fully what that's all about. Well, today we're going to explore that with Xavier. How you doing, Xavier?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, hey man. So, how's the family? Everybody okay? Everybody making it all right during these trying times?
Yep, I am working and practicing while making sure my offspring don't burn down my house, and that's that's my life right now. But
Yeah.
we're all in this together. I mean, we all have our challenges, and we got to do it.
How many kids you have, Xavier? How many kids you have?
I have two. I have
Two.
two. They're 5 and 7.
Or any musical ability exhibited in either one of them?
My daughter is like she has like some pretty good pitch, so that's encouraging. 5-year-old is just wild.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, family's a great thing, and I want to go into your family background. If you could tell us something more about where you're from, your family history, and we'll start from there.
Yeah. Well, my in terms of me being a musician, my father's out of D.C. and actually my mom is a musician too. She played violin and guitar and she sang. My father is a percussionist here in Kansas City. He has or I should say, we have a non-for-profit organization called Traditional Music Society, and we have drumming and dancing troops centered around the music and dance of West Africa, Brazil, and the islands, the Caribbean islands. Um, and yeah, like I said, he's out of DC. He came here back in the 80s and just started, creating his base as a performer. And then he just eventually got into more of an educational realm. Stopped gigging in the clubs and started doing more education. And now he's full time with his own nonprofit. And I work with him, or lately we haven't been doing much, of course, because of the virus shutting everything down. But he's doing some, lessons over Zoom with the Jackson County Court and things like that. So that's where I'm coming from. Growing up, I grew up as a percussionist.
Okay.
So that was my foundation, and then did. In short, he was like, "Yeah, you got to learn some notes. You got to learn some melody and harmony." So it started out with like piano lessons, and then we had a saxophone in the closet around elementary school. Started saxophone in elementary school band, and from then I just became a band geek or band nerd or whatever you call it.
Hmm.
And I was in band throughout, elementary, middle school, high school. Uh,
Hmm.
jazz band competitions, district, state, regional competitions, and I love doing that through high school, and continue to work with him with the percussion stuff as well. And then from there, I just kind of um, I was like, well, I guess I'm a musician, so I'll keep doing this thing. It seems to be working pretty well.
So as a percussionist, do you have a different approach or attitude or personality when you're sitting behind percussion versus when you work with the saxophone?
That's a good question. I mean, I really think that the better you know your instrument, the better it shows you. Um, so I like to say that, like, me and my personality shine, or show through the instrument, whatever it is. I think it's just different. It might be just different segments of my personality.
Mm-hmm.
The drumming, the percussion is West African percussion. So if you know about the
Mm-hmm.
instrument, the djembe and the junjun from West Africa, you're talking Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and a lot of my teachers were from those regions. And it's just a different energy. I mean, it's and then you have different energies when when you study tribe to tribe.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very different. So I'm not really. That's a really good question. It's just I think it's just different parts of the spectrum maybe that come out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
think yeah, I think I was just I think my training was is to like be able to play as many styles and be able to play as many things as possible, to stay working essentially. But of
Yeah.
course, at the same time, do what you love.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked that question because I find that within myself that if I'm playing church, if I'm playing with the church band or directing church group, then I have more of a Quincy Jones kind of George Martin hat on and
Okay.
attitude about it. And even though I play guitar, sometimes I wear a shirt and a tie because I'm being very clinical about, when you're doing the rehearsal and you're getting the music lined up just right.
Yeah.
When I'm on stage playing live and playing with an actor or something, I don't necessarily wear those things, and I might wear something with a hood because my personality, especially if I'm doing in the one band that's a tribute for Madonna and Gaga,
Yeah.
I play two different roles because their music, the feel and the attitude associated with their music is so different. So it's
Yeah.
a curious thing I've always had when I look at musicians that can play more than one instrument as to whether or not it's kind of, uh, you know, what do you call that condition when people have multiple personalities? Do you have multiple
Uh,
personalities that you divide yourself into different people to do that, or if you are
yeah.
one
Well, that's
person that
yeah.
just can do different things? You know what I mean? You see what I'm coming from, what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. They used to call it multiple personality disorder. It's a identity dis I, it's an IDD is the acronym.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, So it's not for me. It's not down to the instrument. It's down to the context
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a performer and a teacher
Mm-hmm.
and clinician as a music therapist. So it's not necessarily with the instrument. It's putting the different hats on, and then the instrument, whatever the instrument is needed for the situation. That's just a vehicle.
So when you were taught, let's deal with the percussion side. When you were taught percussion, you said you had different instructors that taught you different styles, different uh, nationalities of the origin of the different types of percussion music that you were working with, correct?
Hmm.
Yeah. So, how was your teachers? Were they taskmasters? Was it pretty easy? Were they easy on you? Were they very difficult? Did you have, what were some of the challenges you had in working like that with them for those different styles?
Um, yes to all that. And I just remembered this dissociative identity disorder. Sorry. I couldn't let that go. All right.
Okay.
But yeah, you're talking about I don't want to generalize when you talk about the African continent because that would just be grossly incorrect. But my
Hmm.
teachers were also taught by taskmasters and learning the instrument, the djembe, the drum is also it was learning the instrument was almost secondary
Hmm.
to learning the culture or some of the culture behind it.
Hmm.
And but uh, the nature of the instrument is that you have to build uh, this tolerance not for pain, but yeah, there is pain involved because you're using your hands and you're
Mhm.
using a lot of force.
Mhm.
A lot of the stuff from Guinea is particularly is very high
Mhm.
energy. The dances are
Mhm.
high energy,
Mhm.
and I'll say right now, this is me speaking as still a student. I'm not
Mhm.
speaking as an expert, even though
Mhm.
I've played like forever, in
Mhm.
compared to maybe some other people. But I'm still speaking as a student.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very much a baby still, but uh, yeah, I think the nature how I learned was through playing in dance workshops and 2 to 3 hour dance workshops. They last like
Mhm.
2 to 3 hours easy. And this is when
Mhm.
I was younger,
Mhm.
and this is when I was like really like cutting my teeth as a drummer, and
Mhm.
the endurance, the splitting your hands open and getting the blood blisters and
Mhm.
going home and recovering and that is like nothing replaces that and it's very
Mhm.
physical. Um,
Mhm.
so I think the nature of how you learn the drum was more so it than like the personality of my teachers. It's just like
Mhm. Mhm.
that's just how it's just rigorous by nature.
Mhm. Mhm. How was so saxophone? Your entry into saxophone. What age did you say you did that? Say again, which age
Um,
did you get there?
fourth grade, so what, 10, 11,
Mm-hmm.
11, 12.
Yeah. Okay.
I think. Yeah. So that's around that age, and I remember
Was it
Dad.
was it a saxophone? Was it a saxophone in the home or that you got one from the school?
It was in
Your
the
first
home. It was
saxophone.
yeah. It was this old horn that was in the closet,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember my dad pulled it out because he had played like some clarinet,
Mm-hmm.
when he was a kid. So he knew how to work with a reed instrument. So
Mm-hmm.
he bought a reed and pulled it out one day and just had me blow,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, somehow I just ended up in band class. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he was just kind of he didn't like really push me, but he was like kind of like, well, you need to do something. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this, so maybe you do some of this too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was around that was fourth grade, and w- what happened was even before then is I would sit down in the basement at and observe rehearsals. And the band that he was with for a long time during my childhood was a band called BCR. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if you're familiar with that. That's a band that was in Kansas
Is
City.
that Bill Crane? Is BCR Bill Crane? Was Bill
I
Crane
think
in it?
that's BRC Studios. What is
Oh,
it? What's the
BRC.
acronym
Okay.
of? I think
Yeah.
it's BRC or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, BCR it stood for Black Crack Review.
Hmm.
Take it how you want, but it was on Sun Ra. It was on some Sun Ra stuff, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was like it was eclectic funk, reggae, fusion, jazz,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of everything, and they had a horn section. So I would just sit on the steps of the basement, and I mean they were always rehearsing, and that's kind of, I think that was an inspiration for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
So do you have a favorite between percussion and playing sax? Do you have a
Oh,
favorite?
don't do that to me, Marlon. Yeah, that's that. I'm and I think I drive people crazy by always, I'm a habit of being in the middle and being able to argue both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and I drive my friends nuts because they're like, no, you have to be on the team, you have to
Mm-hmm.
pick one, you have to have a favorite, and I'm like, no, that's boring.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it like because I can't like get the same thing personally out of playing the horn that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think again, I use the word spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I think when somebody is a musician, or when somebody's an artist, or when somebody endeavors to do something well, you just
Mm-hmm.
have different tools to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm endeavoring to communicate. I'm endeavoring to channel whatever is out there through me through an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
The instrument just changes sometimes. So that's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. That it's
Yeah.
all about like whatever chunk, whatever section needs to come out at whatever time, and then the function, whether it's performance or teaching or therapy, it's all
Yeah.
it really depends. Yeah.
Do you write music? Do you have compositions?
Lately, all my compositions have been through music therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Just the necessity of being able to take the client's ideas and start to set them to melody and lyrics and rhythm, um, and that has been an amazing journey. And um, because me as a percussionist and going into that field, that was lacking. So I'm like daily like taking these huge leaps of faith and saying like, yeah, I can write a song.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, you would I would have been no, well, 5 years ago. That's when I started music therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I would have told you you were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be done depending on what the client needs. So uh,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, I've been I've written things like for myself, like, and they're all in pieces. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
in pieces right now. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I have pieces of stuff from when I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
and really, I'm just now kind of getting serious about like registering my own stuff and things like
Yeah.
that. That's I think that's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
As
What
far as
about have you
publishing.
recorded any of those pieces? Do you have them on in some kind of recording? Or
I
have
have,
you worked?
yeah. So I'm gonna use air quotes, produced
Okay.
like hip hop for a long time too, and I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with various musicians, and I think growing up into that, it was more like it's fun, and then like now I'm finally to the place where it's like, oh, you have to be serious about this. So like, yeah, there's recordings out there, and now it's like really biting down and getting things situated so that it can be published correctly and things like that. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
everything's scattered right now. Right now, right for the past 10 years of my professional career, it's really been doing a lot of like cover band stuff. Has been doing working with artists that have their own stuff. I've been playing a lot of other people's stuff for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where I've found my niche as being very able to shift my mode and shift styles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's really where I found my home, and I think moving forward, I'll be slowly moving into my own stuff.
Yeah, let me ask you on that on playing covers, for some musicians, we go the route of there's some that can do it all. There's some that write their own stuff but don't like to do covers. They think you know, that's a lower level of play or whatever. How do you find do you when you what's your approach to dealing with covers? Do you learn it note for note or do you get the general idea and then you create off what you hear? How do you approach covers?
So usually I'm in the horn section, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm like auxiliary percussionist,
Mm-hmm.
or both in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I I'm I was trained to learn it accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Depending on the group that I'm with, some groups are able to be flexible and make it their own in a
Mm-hmm.
tasteful way. But
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to be able to do that as a group and be
Mm-hmm.
very in tune with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Mm-hmm.
deviate and think that you're like paying homage by yourself by like putting your own thing on it, because that's my that to answer your question, covers I think it's important, because I think we can't like disregard the fact that give them what they want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people, that's what people recognize. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that musicians need to get out of their own head sometimes and be like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you are. an artist, but you are also a performer, and people's affinity for certain tunes, like that's highly emotional.
Mm-hmm.
The certain songs are tied to like very strong emotions to very specific times in their life.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
really important.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, doing a cover well is paying homage to
Mm-hmm.
the artist. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why for me, like, example, you got a Stevie cover band, boy, you
Mm-hmm.
better do it right.
Yeah.
And I think you agree with me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or Prince or anybody, man. Like, do it accurately, but then
Yeah.
put that little layer of yourself so that you
Mm-hmm.
are being an artist and so that you are not just copying.
Mm-hmm.
That's when your true musicianship comes out. But
Yeah.
then, like, you can't just do it like as one player in a band. Like, the whole band has to have the sensitivity among the group to
Yeah.
be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading an article of some of the band members that had played with Prince, speaking of him, and they said that he was a stickler for his thing was, respect the music. If he laid the music in front of you or you came to audition for him and he says, play Let's Go Crazy, he don't want to hear your Let's Go Crazy. He wants to hear how you do his Let's Go Crazy. And that they said he
Well,
was very tough on that, on people, on
yeah.
respecting the music or whatever the arrangement that he had set out, play that.
Yeah.
That kind of discipline, it takes discipline to do that, to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's the way I was trained. Was, I mean, especially if you're getting a chart or you playing. Yeah, Prince calls you.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, you play his music. You play Prince. You put yourself away. Yeah.
So back on the music therapy. So for the viewers who may not know much about that, can you explain what does a music therapist do? How did you get into it? And then what do you do as a music therapy? Who does it help? What's the purpose for it? Can you go there? Go basic for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah, of course. So I got into music therapy through me being a music teacher, an instructor, and that's me like working in. Before I was doing that, I was working in the public school districts and contracted through Kansas City YA through my dad's organization, and we had students within our organization, kids in the inner city, and we would teach them this drumming, this West African drumming, and then me also being a saxophone teacher. What I was seeing in my lessons were therapeutic. Well, I saw outcomes that were not necessarily musical. I found myself less concerned about musical outcomes. I
Mm-hmm.
did not care as much about, okay, this student can read a 18th note, a 16th note at certain BPM by this date. I was seeing like the social emotional growth, or your ability
Mm-hmm.
to tolerate frustration, or your
Mm-hmm.
ability to attend to a certain task for a long time. I was seeing
Mm-hmm.
these other areas develop. Now, those other areas develop,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether somebody's in music therapy or not. If you learn an instrument,
Mm-hmm.
you're learning all that. But the music therapist, we are using the music therapy process to improve or increase non-musical goals.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that, and if this is obviously recorded, so if anybody is like, because I have to speak for the entire profession, and uh, the American Music Therapy Association, or musictherapy.org is the website for our national organization, and we are certified through CBMT, and that's cbmt.org, and that's our certifying organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what that looks like is, as a practicing music therapist, I personally work in mental health with basically K through 12. I work in a school-based program,
Mm-hmm.
the Tri-County
Mm-hmm.
Mental Health System, and it's considered an expressive therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your traditional therapies, which we draw from all of the traditional therapies, and dialectical behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, recreational therapy. We draw from all those. But the music experience or the music process, whether that's sometimes it is music learning, sometimes it does look like a jam session. But
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing, the difference is that we're targeting specific skills. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
physical skill, we have a subset called, or a specialization, not a subset, called NMT, neurologic music therapy, where if somebody's working on gait, say a Parkinson's patient,
Mm-hmm.
the rhythm is used to train gait,
Hmm.
and you get your baseline, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a scientific process of getting the baseline, and then modifying the musical elements to get to your goal, whether that's increasing speed of gait or whether that's improving regularity of gait. In my realm, in music therapy and mental health, I work with kids all the way from kids that have things like uh, dysregulation disorders, um, to attention deficit disorders, major depressive disorder. Um, it really runs the gamut. I mean, I have students that also um, are working on anger. Intermittent explosive is unfortunately still a diagnosis. I wish it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I work with a really broad spectrum. So, for example, a good chunk of my caseload is kids that are adjusting to like a divorce. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, music therapy ends up being what I jokingly, but I'm serious as well. Like it ends up being kind of a gateway therapy, where
Mm-hmm.
like the music process a lot, and a lot of times with those students, I would use interventions that are based on songwriting
Mm-hmm.
and being able to take their expression and help them to reflect or to express their emotions and thoughts through song. And you know what you're tracking is an increase in self-esteem or increase in being able to communicate effectively, to effectively regulate your emotions. So whatever your goal is, you're tracking it, and so that's really what makes the difference between a musician and a music therapist is the process of tracking those goals and documenting those goals, and of course adhering to like whatever organization their policies. So yeah, and there's plenty of research involved. Um, we have journals from the American Journal of Music Therapy, the Canadian Journal of Music Therapy. Europe has their journals, so it's kind of in our research base is growing. So
So let me ask you a question on right on that point right there. Does the music therapist work in conjunction with, let's say, the school psychologist, or is the music therapy mode of treatment, or is it another alternative other than sending the child to a psychologist or psychiatrist to get, say, for instance, a drug? Let's say a kid that has exhibiting signs of depression or something. Would they come to you bypassing, or do they go to the psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor first, and then they recommend going to the music therapist as furtherance of their treatment plan?
yes, um,
All that in there somewhere.
in my case, like I said, we're in a school based program through Tri County Mental Health Services, which serves North Clay County, which is the northern part of Kansas City. We are working with the districts and the individual school contacts, which are the social workers and school counselors in those schools. And a good chunk of my caseload are students that are not responding to traditional therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was there's a lot of music therapists that are private practice. They seek out they get their clientele in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing. They're private
Mm-hmm.
business entities, and through their marketing, through their contacts, they get their clients, or their clients find out about them, and
Mm-hmm.
and it really depends on your niche too. My thing is mental health. I, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm every music therapist has their like level of comfortability with different populations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the referral process can vary depending if you're in private
Mm-hmm.
practice or
Mm-hmm.
I was in inpatient psych for a long time too,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
looks very different because those patients are coming in a lot of times involuntarily, and you're working
Mm-hmm.
with the nurses and the doctors, psychiatrists and the psychology team all together interdisciplinary. And a lot of times in those cases we are a supportive therapy, and then again sometimes we're that gateway therapy where like, oh well, this just seems like um, we're hanging out in a circle like um, having it sometimes it begins with them having
Mm-hmm.
catharsis
Mm-hmm.
through the music therapy process,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of latch on to
Mm-hmm.
that, and then we start to dig in from there. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we serve a lot of different populations, so um, it really depends on which niche you're in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hospital settings as musical therapists, they I assume they work in hospital settings as well. You know,
Yeah.
if patients
Yeah.
that are maybe not going to make it or something, do they have hospitals sometimes call upon therapists to help bring them back or help them give them um, to help with the treatment plan for somebody that's maybe really critically ill? Does that work?
Yeah.
Does that happen in the
And
field?
and the key one of the key things, and I like that you said treatment plan because that's the key thing. It is integrated in the treatment plan. In medical settings, yes, just like in mental health, you are wanting to not just rely on, well, not you, the leading or the modern idea of health in general is
Mm-hmm.
becoming more holistic.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm looking at. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing, and that
Mm-hmm.
is your a more integrated approach is becoming more accepted, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that people are generally more open to or wanting more things like expressive therapy incorporated into their treatment plan. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like soothing or addressing decreasing the amount of pain during procedures, or
Mm-hmm.
whether a lot of us work in a NICU where the premature babies are needing assistance with breathing in their first moments of life. And those are very specific applications that we use that are data driven, because in medical settings it's you're not just it's always life or death, but in medical settings the stakes
Mm-hmm.
are definitely higher. Hospice is a definite big part of our a lot of my colleagues are in hospice, uh, increasing quality of life at the end of life is the
Mm-hmm.
main goal of that, and also helping the family to cope and to bring closure into process. So
That
yeah.
that's amazing. I didn't know that music therapists would get into that into hospice. That's very interesting.
And
I
I
didn't
we
I
all
didn't know
do
that.
clinical rotations in school, and
Yeah,
hospice was actually the rotation that I learned the most.
is that right?
Yeah, because well, my supervisor at that time, Amy Wilson, she really like just said like, no, you're gonna do it. Like you're ready. Go and you know what you're gonna do for this application. Like stop
Mm-hmm.
stalling, just do it. You're ready. But also like just learning about, I mean, life and just
Yeah,
being with somebody and being with somebody's family,
yeah.
um, and it being such a lot of times just some of the most beautiful moments happen in those settings. Um,
Was it hard to witness that? Like people at the end stage or of their life, was it hard at first when you got into that? And if so, how did you cope with that? with those
So
feelings?
in my experience, they were in their last days. I did not experience somebody that was actively dying, which is a term. But
Hmm.
I did like have to cope with like the next few days later, like my supervisor saying, "Well, so and so, he's passed," and uh, I think I was better suited for it because I started music therapy later than a lot of people. I took a break from my undergrad for a few years, and by the time I got to my master's, I was a little bit I knew what I wanted to do, and I was a little bit older than my classmates, and I think I was a little bit more ready to be in those real situations. Yeah, my whole world's been rocked, man. Um, like Roz knew me when I first started on my foray with acoustic guitar, which is the primary instrument with music therapy. And I even remember when I picked up your guitar and played a little bit of Hendrix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when I was first getting into it, and I was like, that was the mode. Was the time when I was like really digging on some
I don't
Hendrix.
know why I was sitting here thinking that the musical therapy, you were either playing the saxophone or you were doing the percussion. But that's
Not
right. It is with guitar. It is with guitar. With guitar. That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
a lot of my colleagues are vocalists and
Yeah.
or guitarists or piano players or a combination.
Okay.
So it's just because of the ease of access, the portability, and being able to facilitate a musical experience.
Yeah. Wow.
But I've used saxophone before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I will end with like the fact that on a broader scope, um, music I think has been put into this elitist place. You're a great musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the lowly audience, who is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, this, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great too. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's space for that, and that's it is what it is, and that's awesome. But I think what inspired me was the root of like music being a part of um, you have ritual and you have things like whether it be the church or your regular gatherings or whether you have a birth or a death or a wedding. Music
Mm-hmm.
is not separated from these it's on an anthropological standpoint. It's not this
Mm-hmm.
separate thing that I think we've made it this separate elite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what inspired my journey into music therapy is the reincorporating it to assist us being human and these important parts of becoming human, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, so that's kind of really I think the reason why I got into it.
Hmm. I have one last question to ask you, and I ask all of my guests this question. I take a line from The Tale of Two Cities. Um, I know I'm taking it out of context, but I just like the line as talking when I refer it to a journey. When I look at
Yeah.
myself, the journey of my whole stretch of from the first time I played an instrument to this point and everything I'm doing now. So I'll ask you. The line is, "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times." When you hear that, what comes to you in quick 1 minute answer?
Oh, well, honestly, it just reminded, or it, right now, I mean, I I think there are so many things about right now that speak to that. I mean, we have had to adjust to relating to each other in a whole different way, and it's easy right now to focus on the things that are bad about it, but I think we're having to exercise things we haven't in a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
I really think that that's gonna we're not really gonna see the fruits of that like right away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But that phrase reminds me of now with COVID-19 with the protests. Um, yeah, that reminds me of now, really.
So, are we going to get a chance to hear any kind of quick
Yeah, we can
song
do
from you?
something.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Hey man, think with the Jimi Hendrix influence, did you ever think about maybe you could play it behind your back or play it with your teeth or doing a performance, set it on fire after you finish playing it? You ever think about that?
Man,
It's never
I'm
been
still
done.
I'm still making sure I hold the instrument the right way. I mean, I think since the time that when I played your guitar, since that time I do feel a lot more comfortable with the instrument. Now electric is
Hmm.
so much, that's a whole nother world, man. But yeah, I that's just it's been a wonderful journey, like picking up the
No, but
instrument.
I'm saying, what if somebody came up with a concept where they played percussion and they played percussion behind their back, or
That's
you know what I'm
that
saying?
exists. That exists.
Really?
That's there's guys, yeah, yeah. What is this? He's probably passed by now. I think his name was Madhu. He would play. He would play like that. He would play like this. He would play
Okay.
like that,
Wow.
and he would play. He would play on his knee. He would play on his knee like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, that's a whole nother like.
You could get that, man. You could get that. I have no
Oh
doubt
yeah,
about
man. I gotta.
that.
I just need like 10 lives.
Yeah. Hey, man, that's excellent, excellent performance for our viewers. We all appreciate that. Um, Xavier, I want to thank you for spending this time with us and sharing your story and your talent. We definitely, I'm sure, speak on behalf of the viewers that be watching this. We wish you continued elevation and success. And, thank God for people like you that who are not selfish with your talent, who find ways to heal and to share it and make people better. That is absolutely great. To the audience, you've been watching Conversations with Marlon, the guitar player in the corner. I'm your host, Marlon Bankston. Thanks for watching. Come see us again.